So I was thinking, how should I start this out? Anybody got any idea how I should start out a presentation? With a story.
Stories. Or a joke.
Okay, so these two guys were two old boys from the hills were talking out by their friend's fence of one of their houses, and there's an old hound dog laying on the porch, and all of a sudden he rears up and goes, oh, lays back down. Fellas kind of notice him, keep on talking. Dog, a couple minutes later, oh, lays back down. One fellow says, Ned, says, your dog seems to be in a bit of pain. Ned says, yeah, he's laying on a nail and it hurts him some. He says, well, Ned, why don't he get off that nail? He says, oh, well, it just don't hurt him that much. And in sales, we're all kind of laying on a nail in some way, shape, or form. There's something we're probably doing that's getting in the way of effectively selling as we'd like to. We don't always know what it is. We can't always identify it. But our customers generally identify it and they walk away from the sale at some point. And that's what we want to talk about today. These 7 deadly sins of selling that may be things that could be getting in your way, keeping you from relating as well to the customers as you would like to. So before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about selling. Well, I want to do this quote first. It says, I am not a product of my circumstances. I am a product of my decisions. And that's really true in sales. We are a product of our decisions. So let's start off with the sales process chart. This is what I believe is how we kind of move through the sale in 4 steps. And the first thing is we have a prospect, right? And in that prospect, we research them. Who's our best prospect? Who's the best person we can talk to? Meaning, who's most likely to buy from us again? We plan for when we're going to call and what we're going to say when we call them. We develop our list of who those people are, and then we start to reach out to them, right? And we start to qualify them. One of the qualifications we might do could be in our prospecting calls. We might ask them a couple of questions to find out if they're the type of customer that we might want to work with. But as we start getting into discovery, which I feel is probably the most important thing that we can do in sales, we want to identify their needs, their ability to buy, and we want to agree on the next steps we're going to take. We get into the solution phase then, and a lot of people mess up when we talk about this, but they confuse the solution phase with the discovery phase. They start to solve too quickly, right? They start to go to the solution too quickly. So we create a solution after the discovery conversation, not during the discovery conversation. We bring that back to them, we have a discussion about the solution. We prove our capabilities. This is something that many people go into much too early in a sale. They start to prove their capabilities before they've decided on whether we have a solution for them. And then when we get into the final piece of negotiation and close, we present a final solution. We reach the final agreement. We talk about the signed document. So this is probably not something that's unfamiliar to you. This may have some emphasis in different areas, but it's a very important part of the sales process. So as we go through this, here's what I want you to think about just for a moment, and then maybe write a note or two. I think there's a place for you to write this in your pamphlet there. And that is, what are the goals of the sales process? What would you say are, as we go through that, what are our goals? What are we trying to accomplish in that sales process? So take a moment. Is there a place for that in the notes, Jeff? So what are you trying to accomplish? Not there? Okay. Well, there's other things that are going to be there, so write it above that first line. Anyway, so who's got something? What do you want to accomplish during this sales process for yourself? Nolan?
You want to identify and find people.
Identify and find the right people that people have the ability to buy and have the money to buy too, right? Having the money. We've been in this process before where we go through the whole process and they say, well, it's not in the budget, or gee, that's really expensive, we're not going to be able to afford that, or whatever other reason they might come up with. It could be price oriented or whatever. So okay, what else do we want to accomplish in this sales process?
Provide value that otherwise was not there before you came.
Okay, we want to show them that we have value, that we're bringing value to them, that if we start working together, things are going to go better for you in some way, and that we have a value proposition that's going to be good for you. Thank you. Another idea. Yeah, Rob.
Their pain points. what's bringing them here? And
We want to find out what their needs, their issues, their pains are, right? What else?
We want to disqualify them too.
You want to disqualify them?
Yeah.
Okay, so if they can't, they don't have the ability to buy.
Yeah, they're
All right.
not a fit.
Good, okay, what else? Anything else? Yeah.
Build trust and rapport with the client.
That's excellent. Build trust and rapport with the client. A lot of people forget about that. They're so busy starting to talk about what they have that they're not trying to find, as somebody mentioned, identifying the needs and then building that trust.
Unless you're disqualified.
Gail?
Mark Larson says get a referral after the sale. So if
Get a referral after the sale. Right, that's a good thing to try and get. Maybe get a referral during the sale. Because then I don't have to worry about whether I made the sale or not. If they trust me, even if they don't make the sale, if they trust me, they like my process, they like the way I'm working with them, they may be willing to recommend someone to me. Jeff, you said something.
Oh, I said, unless you're trying to disqualify the building.
Right, right. Well, Scott's always trying to disqualify me, but he's very elitist.
Move
Yes.
on.
Understand who are the influencers and who are the decision
Who are the team players? Who else do we need to be talking to? A lot of people miss that one. That's an excellent one. We don't always talk to and find out who else besides you is going to be part of this decision-making process. And so that's an excellent one. All right, one more. Anybody else have one idea that comes to mind?
timeline.
I'm sorry?
Timeline.
Timeline, when do you want to get this done? So some of these I have here, some of them I don't. But we talked about gain insight into their issues and needs. Why did they say, okay, come in and meet with me? Why are they taking the phone call, the web call, or the in-person interview? They're not doing it just because they had a half hour to blow in the middle of the day. So one of the things we know, if they say yes to an appointment, chances are they have some kind of need, but it's our goal is to find out what that is. We want to build a trusting relationship, absolutely. We want to build trust, and Scott and I just talked about this on our podcast yesterday, which should be out today. It's live today, the newest winning and selling podcast. But one of the things we talked about was are we looking for a relationship or a friendship, or are we looking for trust? And Scott actually mentioned that he bought from somebody he really didn't like, but he did trust. Okay, and I've told the story before about my friend who owns a car auto repair shop. And he's grumpy, and he's surly, and he talks politics all the time, and his place is a mess. But I trust him imminently with my vehicle, and that he will give me a fair deal. That he will do the right thing when he has my car. So, and I like him. I didn't really like him at first. I like him now, but I had to kind of build into that. But trust was where it started, right? Trust was where it started. So trust is really important. Just talked about meeting the key players. Who else besides you is going to be involved in this? I want to achieve some small agreements. This is something that people, they think, okay, I got to close the deal, I got to close the deal, and closing the deal is important, but closing the deal comes with small agreements. Is this what you wanted? Is this a direction? Is this? So you're always asking, it's not a closing question, but it's an agreement question, that we're moving in the right direction. Let me do a little example with you why this is so important. I'm going to say a word and then I'm going to spell it, and I want you to repeat after me, and we'll do that 3 times. So the first word is joke, J-O-K-E. So say it with joke, say it with me. Joke, J-O-K-E. Joke, J-O-K-E. Joke, J-O-K-E. Second word is folk, F-O-L-K. Folk, F-O-L-K. Folk, F-O-L-k. Folk, F-O-L-k. What's the white of the egg called? What's the white of the egg called?
Yolk.
What's the white of the egg called?
Oh, it's a white of the egg.
How many of you said yolk? How many of you thought yolk? You only saw yolk because we did joke and then folk and then yolk, right? Well, we know the white of the egg is the white of the albumin. It's got the yolk. That's the yellow part of the egg. So why did you say yolk? Because I had you going in the direction I wanted you to go into. Yes, small yeses, small agreements are that same thing. I don't only ask one closing question that says, you want to buy it or not? So how many you want, right? It's all these little agreements that come up. Do you like the way this is said? Do you like the way this is going? Do you like the way this, is that what you want? Is that what you need? Is that going to help you? Right? So we achieve all those small agreements before we go for the big agreement. We connect our product and services to their needs, right? So that's what I call it a discussion document or a proposal or whatever you want to bring into them. We're now attaching, this is what you told me you needed, This is how we're going to do it. This is what you told me you needed. This is how we're going to do it. This is what you told me you needed. This is how we're going to do it. You like the way that's going? You like the way, right? All that's what the discussion document. This is why I almost never make a sale in my first discovery meeting. Because I want to bring something back and get the agreements with it. And then finally, and I was really happy that nobody started off with this, so I'm really proud of you as a group, because you're not thinking about just the last thing. 90% of the groups I talk to, they say, close the sale, close the deal, close the sale. That is the last thing. That is a result of doing the process correctly. That's a result. It's not the process, it's not close the deal. Closing the deal comes from getting small agreements, building trust, connecting our product to our service to their needs, meeting all the key players, all the things that you said that we're not up here. So these are all important things for us to do. All right, so with those in mind, what are the 7 deadly sins? So here's what I want you to think. This is really like one of the smartest audiences, because that's because you come to PSA all the time. So what I want you to think about is for yourself, what do you think, and it doesn't have to be all 7, but just some ideas. What am I going to reveal as the 7 deadly sins? What do you see as some of the 7 mistakes that people make? All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around to each group and have you give me your top 3, and we'll write them on the board, and then we'll just make sure we get all of them listed. We'll might go around twice to make sure we got them all. But I don't want to take them all. Have the first group take every good one, you know, and then by the time we get to 4, we'll be like, So anyway, and it's okay to repeat them. All right, so we'll put a check mark by the ones that we repeat, so we use those again. So Dorothy, why don't you be first? Give me a couple, 2 or 3 of your top ones that you talked about.
I think one of them is, that was really good, was making assumptions about your customer, either during the meeting or right, before you go in.
Okay, all right, so making assumptions about what they want, what they might need, what I'm going to talk to them about, instead of thinking about the questions that I need to ask them, right? What's another one?
Knowing your value. So not,
Not knowing your value.
Yeah. Knowing or not knowing your value, right?
All right, and one more.
We talked about being relatable, having no empathy or low EQ is also, not great.
What I want to talk about is an important thing, and then you get to ride along with my conversation. All right, good. That's a really good list. All right, so Lisa,
I'm
you're ready? Okay.
So
I didn't catch your name. I'm
This
sorry.
is our Kristen. I'm going to follow this.
Tell me your name.
Kristen.
Kristen. Thank
Kristen
you.
Boss. So we had pipeline management.
And tell me what you mean by that.
I'm sure.
She just took the notes.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
somebody's
No,
gonna-
I got words.
It was your
I got
own
words
note,
here.
and I
Those words.
said, wait a minute, I'm panicking here.
No. Sometimes if you get busy working with existing prospects, and especially if your whatever service or product that you're selling is more of a partnership and not a transactional type of a relationship, it can take a lot of your time.
Yeah.
And so it can get you unfocused from continuing to build your pipeline.
Yeah, as an individual consultant, it's really easy to get busy
Yeah.
with a client and forget to go prospect, right? And so there's nothing there. Once I finish with this client, there's nothing there to get going to. So, okay, another one.
Shared by a couple of us here is that you like pushing your own agenda instead of what the prospect cares about, what they need.
All right. And one more. And if it's a copy of one of these, that's okay
Yeah, I
too.
think that the rest of them were just kind of hobbies.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, good.
Got it.
Let's go to this group here. So Cody, you want to do it? What were a couple ideas from your group?
First one is not listening to the customer, not listening to the.
What was that?
Not listening.
Don't trust salespeople. I'm sorry. Here's a funny
Bunch
story.
of very introverted
So I was working for a company and we were getting bought out, and so we were all getting fired, right? And I had only been there like a year, so for me it was like, hey, they're gonna give me 6 months of trouble. This is great, I got 6 months for working here a year. But there were people that had been there like 20 and 30 years. They were totally invested in the company, and it was like the most important thing. So they got us the psychologist, right? So because we're all in such terror, and so we have a safe space. And so we went to the psychologist, and nobody would talk for like the first couple times. And finally, one person just like laid out their heart. And he said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I was thinking of something else." Oh, geez, I didn't hear you. And that was like the end of the psychologist deal. So, oh yeah, you finally said something, and I was like zoning, you know. So, what's another one, Cody?
Not qualifying
Okay.
prospect or, yeah. So there, with that, there was like either going to the end of the sale and then they're not qualified, but they could have been if you qualified them.
Yeah.
Or there's just not actually doing it.
Yeah, we're just trying to close it on what we want. Yeah, yeah. Sometimes it's like, oh, I got to sell what I have. So, all right, great, good. How about your group? You got another one?
Yeah. Okay, so Robin had a really good one. No follow-up. So that would be you went there and you presented or you talked about the value you provide. You listened to it, and after you left, you just didn't give that, hey, thanks for meeting with me. I appreciated your time, or the basically following up on what are the next steps.
Yeah, if you were here last week with Eric, or last month with Eric Thurwanger, just checking in. Just following up, just checking in. I have no reason to call you, but you know, just checking in. If you started with just, you're probably on the wrong track. Just screwing around, just wasting your time. Yeah. All right, what's another one?
Floyd had a very good one. If you ever, and Floyd actually used the experience of, you ever get a call from somebody and it's like they're reading off of a script and they're not listening to you or listening to their cues. All they're doing is just talking and talking and talking.
Yeah, does someone say, yeah, pushing our own agenda. So
Yep.
I'm going to put that one there. That's excellent. All right, any more? One more?
Yeah.
Did you have an idea? Because you had Robin's idea and Floyd's idea.
Oh, yes. Not learning about their needs.
Ah,
So
okay.
failing to make sure that you're listening to them.
All right. Well, we had failing to listen. Okay, so we'll put that there. All right, our needs are paramount. All right, one more group. Thor, you got it? Oh, Mark's got it. What a shock.
This reminds me of a joke. Talking more than listening.
Okay.
It's kind of one we kind of talked about this, didn't we?
I'm going to put talking here. Add that.
And then also, it's sort of the same vein, but not asking open-ended questions, rather closed-ended questions. And another one was closing too early. Always be closing. Always be closing.
ABC. All right. All right, good. Does anybody have any one that we didn't put that we want to add? Kevin?
Just a comment on Mark's selling on benefits, not needs. I had a sales trainer once that said, there are features and then there are advantages. And the customer decides which advantages are benefits.
Right. Right. But how do we know that?
By asking.
By listening.
Yeah.
Gail?
Yeah, I wrote down, when you get asked a question and instead of saying, I don't know, answering the wrong way.
Okay.
Because you
Wrong
can get
answer
caught. You can get caught.
All right, good. That's a good one. Floyd?
Yeah, one more is not managing your own energy.
Okay, tell me what you mean by that.
So I'm going into it, what energy do I need to bring? Doing that pre-work on ourselves. Because some people show up and it's like, as the person being sold to, I'm checking for a pulse.
Right.
So, what energy do I need to be bringing and managing the energy and shift it based on where the customer is?
Yeah, a friend of mine and I talk about this all the time in presentations, that we're trying to be so cool, we're boring. And I think it's the same way, let me tell you about my thing here, and it's just boring, right? And we're not putting the energy. But I found it's much easier if they put the energy in. So if we ask good questions and the customer's putting the energy into it, but when we try to talk all the time, then it's really hard to create that energy. And a great example of this is when I asked you to turn around and start talking, and the energy that you could just feel in the room from you talking to each other and sharing your own ideas, because we always think our ideas are better than anyone else's, right? It's just human nature, right? Yeah, I got a great idea, and if you recognize that it's a great idea, you're an awfully smart person. So let them talk. But if we try to impose that energy on ourselves, we're going to run out of it. So process. All right. Well, we got a lot of them here. We got more than 7, which really says there's a lot of ways to screw up sales. Because we're working with people, and there's a lot of ways to screw up relationships. But I'm going to go through my 7, and what I want you to know from this experiment is these aren't cast in stone in any way. These are kind of the ones that strike me as the most important. But there's nothing on here that isn't important. right? There's nothing that you came up with that aren't great ideas and things that we need to be careful of when we're in selling. So let me do the list. Okay, so Albert Einstein said that, we've all heard this, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And so that's the whole purpose of getting new ideas out of PSA. I think this is probably the cheapest sales training in the entire world, $10 or $20 a meeting for an hour's worth of sales training, and we know that our speakers, other than me, are really good at what they do. So, current speaker accepted. But we got to change the way we do things, and we do that by thinking through it. So one of the things I've written this up is you're not going to be messing up in 7 or 20 different ways, right? What I want you to think about as we go through these 7, as you think about kind of how these reflect on these that you came up with yourself, is there something I'm doing that's causing me to get in the way of myself, right? And we're looking for maybe 1 or 2 things, 1 or 2 adjustments that we can make to get better. You know, if you look at, I'm not a big golfer, but I've looked at some of the golf statistics, and I like golf because it is a statistical business. But if you look at the top person money winner last year and the 50th money winner, the difference is like 12 million or 20 million to 500,000, right? But you know what the difference is in strokes for 18 holes? Like 1.5. 1.5, 2 strokes for 18 holes is the difference between. It's the small things that make the big difference. And that's what we're looking for. Is there something I'm doing that I don't know about that I could do a little bit better, or that I could get out of my own way and allow the customer to buy? Sometimes we just don't allow them to buy. All right, so let's go through these. Number 1, believing that industry and or product knowledge will lead to sales success. Exactly what we were talking about earlier this morning, right? So many companies will spend weeks and weeks and weeks and months taking you through their boot camp, and their boot camp is always product knowledge, product knowledge, product knowledge, product knowledge, product knowledge. And I am not going to say that product knowledge is not important. I think the biggest thing that product knowledge does for you is gives you confidence going into a sales situation that you can answer the simplest question, right? But beyond that, we have time to think about things. But I'm going to be convinced that product knowledge is important if I'm relying all on product knowledge to make the sale. And if I'm relying on talking, and as Floyd said, me bringing all the energy into the conversation. If I've got to bring everything, if I've got to bring the knowledge, the energy, the advice, everything, I'm going to get really tired in a sale, and I'm going to have a lot of product knowledge because I don't know what's going to hit me when I go out there in the marketplace. But if I rely on questions and I rely on dialogue, I don't have to know that much. Matter of fact, in answer to Gail's thing about baffling him with our bullshit, is that once in a while we can say, you know what, I really don't know, but I will sit down and talk with our experts in our organization. We're going to get you an answer on that. But if I don't have confidence, I won't go into that. I won't say that. Because I need to be the one who knows everything. And so because we want to be that person, we tend to get all kinds of product knowledge. So I had a friend of mine, Kenny, that I used to work with, and I really liked Kenny. And Kenny worked really hard on the product that we sold on product knowledge. And I got a chance to observe Kenny a couple of times in his sales process. And here's what Kenny would do. He'd talk him into it, he'd talk him out of it. He'd talk him into it, he'd talk him out of it. He'd talk him into it, he'd talk him out of it, he'd talk him into it. He'd go like this, like this, like this, like this, all the time. And whenever Kenny finally shut up, that's where the sale was. They were either talked in or talked out. He had no idea because he was just talking. But he knew a lot. And he just threw it all out. And sometimes the most successful salespeople are the newest ones because they can't do anything but answer questions. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. But believing that your product knowledge is so important that you don't get sales knowledge. So what do we do about this? Well, we have to balance industry and product knowledge with sales process knowledge. How do I take my product knowledge and use it wisely in a sales situation? Because if I get a lot of product knowledge, you know what I'm going to want to be? I'm going to want to be the hero in every sale. But if I'm going to make the sale, who needs to be the hero?
Customer.
Customer. The prospect needs to be the hero. We need to give them the hero-ness. We get the sale, they get the applause. right? But if we want all the applause, if we want to be the brainiac, if we want to be the smartest one in the room, then we're going to be in trouble. So build your product knowledge, nothing wrong with that, nothing wrong with being competent. I'm not saying that at all. But as you build that up, continue to come to workshops like this where you can build those sales skills and get out of your own way in some cases. All right. So if that's one that's a challenge for you, if you're so invested in product knowledge, then you're going to have to, do something think about that. Okay, talking instead, number 2, talking instead of listening, telling instead of asking. This is probably, in my case, in my experience of teaching people to sell, this is probably, should be number 1. The other one was number 1 just because we always start with product knowledge. But this is the one thing I see most people do. They go, and I've had situations where I have gone in and I have spent an entire day teaching people about asking questions. And then we go and we start, at the end of the day, we start doing case study work. And they'll ask 2 questions and then they'll start selling. They'll start telling. They'll start showing them product. They'll grab their catalog out of their briefcase, whatever it is. They'll ask 2 questions. And in every case study I do, there's a little sale and there's a huge sale. And if you keep asking questions, you'll get to the huge sale. But if you start selling on the little thing, that's all you're going to get out of this deal. And we just don't probe and drive and develop enough expertise. So that's why I recommend writing down 10 questions. Write down 10 questions before you go in, put them on a piece of paper, and the first thing I say to a client is, do you mind if I ask you a few questions? And I've never had, in 35 years of selling, someone say, no, I don't want you to ask me any questions, just tell me what you got. They want me to ask questions. So I thought this was so important when my oldest son, John, was going to do an interview, his first interview. He got it with a friend of mine, Katie, who was, he's an accountant. It wasn't a CPA yet, but he had finished his accountant. This was an accounting firm. She was the head of HR. They weren't hiring, but I said, go in. She's willing to do a practice interview with you. And he was preparing for it, and I said, let's write down 10 questions, because that's stupid, Dad. She's supposed to be asking me questions. It's an interview. And I said, well, I'm stupid and I'm old, I know, but let's, just humor me on this. So we wrote down 10 questions, typed them up, had them on a piece of paper, and so he did the interview and came back and said, how'd it go? He did, 22. He grunted at me, and so Katie called me later in the day, and she said, oh, I just enjoyed meeting John. He was so friendly and so fun. She said, but the thing that impressed me most was he had a bunch of questions to ask me. I said, I just mean. So people are impressed by that kind of preparation. Now, I'll give you another example that I had. I was asked a couple of years ago by a friend of mine. She was a sales manager. She had a salesman, Brian, and Brian had been their top salesperson for years, and he was falling off like a cliff, right? He just couldn't sell anything. And so I agreed to meet with him. And so I sat down and Brian said, I'm so excited to meet with you. I brought a little recorder here. I want to record everything that you say, and so tell me everything you know. And I asked him one question, and he talked for 45 minutes, the entire time of our time together. And he said, I said, well, what'd you learn? He goes, well, he said, I'm not sure. I said, well, you listen to that tape. You listen to that audio. You'll learn everything you need to know about what you need to sell better. And we got together a week later. I said, what do you want? He goes, I don't know. He said, you didn't tell me anything. I said, well, let's try again. So he said, well, I said, do you want to record it? Yeah, I want to record you again. So I recorded again. I asked him one question. He talked for 45 minutes. And so I said, Brian, I figured it out. I think I know pretty definitely what your problem is. He goes, what is it? I said, listen to that tape. It will reveal itself to you if you listen to that audio. And he listened. He came back a week later. He said, I didn't say anything. He said, I've talked. I said, does that tell you anything? He goes, no. I said, you don't know when to shut up. Right. And that was the last he was excited about talking with me. And he decided to stop the coaching, and he got fired about a month later. Because his problem was that he had been really good when he had to ask questions, but he got really bad when he knew too much. And so this is kind of the combination of too much product knowledge, wanting to be the expert in the room, and not designing questions to ask. He got caught in the telling trap. So how do we get out of the telling trap? Well, think about the questions before you get there. They will not magically come into your mind because you're so good at selling. And even though I've been doing this for 35 years, the first thing I do when I get a customer is I go to my list of questions. I have questions. I have 3 categories about the 3 different major things I sell. I have question sheets, I have a basic sheet, and then I design about 4 or 5 questions within that, and I'm ready to go. I'm not making it up from whole cloth each time, but I'm thinking it through, I'm thinking about what they want, I'm thinking about what we talked about, I'm designing some questions, and then it goes very well, and they always say, sure, ask me some questions. And I'm writing it down, taking notes right there on the questions, and usually I get to about number 5, and then we've gone off into all kinds of great directions. But if I get lost again, I can always go to number 6, because it's right there in front of me, right? So develop the questions, because I really think that good discovery is going to be your key to effective selling, because then you know what to sell them rather than what you want to sell them, or that preconceived notion that you came in with thinking that you were going to sell them. All right, number 3, talking about the product instead of the result. So we talked kind of about, what's the value and what's the benefit and is it a feature. And all right, I got this drill. It's a nice drill. It's got a battery pack. It's 20 volt, 18 volts, so it really will hunt through things. It works really well. It's got a keyless chuck, which I really like. 6 different settings for how. Did I buy this because I want to drill? What do I want, Nolan?
You want a hole?
I want a hole. Well, I couldn't go out and buy a 1/4-inch hole. I had to buy a drill bits, and all that stuff that I needed to get, because you just can't buy a 1/4-inch hole. But that's all I wanted. Hole after hole after hole. And the tool gets me there. But if all I'm talking about is the battery and the keyless chuck and all the wonderful things, and not about how well it drills a hole, I'm talking about the wrong things. I'm talking about all the features that we spent all this time using or creating, and not about what the customer wants, which is the whole. And so that's really what we need to do when we get into talking about how wonderful our product is. And again, that's kind of a pride thing, and that's part of, all the product information that we get from the company, how wonderful we are. And we get in there and beat our chests about how great our product is, and the customer really doesn't care because we haven't asked them enough questions to know what they need and how that drill or whatever that thing we're selling is will fix their problems for them. Will get them out of the hole that they've drilled themselves into, right? So put yourself in the customer's mindset and talk about the results they'll get from purchasing your product, and not just how wonderful your product or service is. All right? So when I sell training, I don't sell the fact that I get to go in and spend 2 or 3 days with their people, and their people are out of work listening to me. That's not the benefit, but that's the thing. Right? The thing is, we're going to spend 3 days with your team, and we're going to put these things together. But they don't care about any of that. They care, will my team be able to sell better when we're done with it? Will they be able to ask better questions? Will they be able to have better interviews? Will they come up with better product or solution designs? Those are what the things that we want them to come out with, right? And I think, again, we're taught in education, it's the thing, right? Get the A on the test. But it's not the A on the test. It's learning that they should be doing, but they're not. They're getting into, did you get an A on the test, right? And so what we need to do is get them past that. What's the results that you want to get out of this? So that's number 3, talking about the product instead of the results. And you guys talked about that. When you talked about value and making assumptions, those are the same thing. All right, number 4, going to the solution mode too quickly, usually with too little information. So we're so anxious to ABC. Was that you, Nolan, gave us the ABC? Always be closing, always be closing. We want to get to the solution because we want to close the sale, so we get anxious and we want to start talking about those early needs that they have. They did a really interesting experiment. I think it was in the 60s. You guys heard of the marshmallow experiment? So what they did was they put these 5 or 6-year-old kids in a room, and they put a marshmallow on the table. And they told them, if you cannot eat that marshmallow before I come back, you'll get 2 marshmallows. But if you eat that marshmallow before I come back, then that's all you get, is that 1 marshmallow. And so then they put and the videos of these kids trying not to eat that marshmallow, right? They're walking to the end of the room, they're not looking at it, they're pushing it away, and then they'll sniff it, and then they'll push it away, but then they'll keep tempting themselves. And some of them are like, yeah, that's it, I just eat it. And I think that's what most salespeople do, just eat it, just go for it, because this is I gotta make the sale, I gotta always be closing, I gotta close the deal, right? But I'll close the small deal, I'll get the one marshmallow and not the two. The interesting thing is, they tested those kids, they looked at them years later after they become adults, and the ones who could resist the marshmallow the longest were much more successful than the ones who ate it right away. The ones who could delay gratification were the ones that were much more successful in life. And I think that's true in sales as well. You need to delay that gratification of going in and starting to tell them what you know, because you saw a little selling gap, you saw a little piece, a little bit of daylight. Let's start selling to that little thing. And in every case, you're going to sell the small thing when there might be a huge opportunity behind that if you go through your questions and you explore it with them. So how do we deal with it? Resist the urge to blurt out the first solution that comes to mind. Instead, ask more penetrating questions designed to find more out about the needs and motivations of the prospect. And what I do, and this is a regular part of my sales process, I call it saving the solution. So let's say that Cody and we sit down and I start telling him about training. And he looks like he asked me a couple of questions, and I start telling, and I ask him a couple of questions, and then I start saying, here's what we can do for you, right? How much is that solution worth? Is it worth a lot, or is it worth a little? Right off the top of my head.
It's worth a little.
It's worth a little, isn't it? Because it's really quick. It's like, you told me something, I got a solution for you, here we go. That's, maybe that's a $10,000 solution. Maybe that's a $3,000 solution. I don't know what it is, but it's a small solution because I've cheapened it. I've cheapened it by saying, Cody, your problems were so small and insignificant that I came in here in 5 minutes of talking, I came up with a solution for you. It was nothing, and I just came up with it, and it's worth nothing too. But if I say to him, Cody, this was really a great conversation. I have some ideas on what we can do for you, but I want to go back with my team and talk to them about your specific needs and really generate a document, I'll call it a working document, of what we might have as ideas that could help you solve this problem. And then we can talk about it and kind of make adjustments. Can we have another appointment and do that? Yeah, absolutely. Because now I'm creating value for that solution. I'm creating a bigger solution. Matter of fact, if I go back and Scott and I will talk about a sale and I'll talk with other friends. I don't have a team. I'm kind of the team, but I'll talk to friends of mine and associates and I'll say, here's the issue, and we'll kind of build on that. We'll come up with a great solution that now is a document that I come down, I sit down in front of Cody and we talk through this, and he's like, wow, that was exactly what I said, and he really gets me and he really understands me, and now we're in sync, and now I can make a big solution. But if I get it on the first shot, it's not worth much, and I've proven it because I just solved your problems. And I've insulted him too, because I said your problems are so small I can solve them in 10 minutes of a conversation. And sometimes, you know what, they are. Sometimes we're so experienced that exactly what we thought in our mind, sitting down with Cody, is almost exactly what we come up with on paper. But I still cheapened it. I still cheapened it, and I've minimized my chances for success because I've blurted this out early. But I can say, hey, listen, I think we got some things, here's what we've done for some other companies, start telling some stories. So resist that urge to blurt out that first solution. All right, I'm running out of time here. Okay. Number 5, being afraid of no, so you accept maybe. And I think there's nothing that kills you more. And you talked about pipeline control. How many clients in your pipeline are maybes that just don't want to tell you no? They're real no's. But they told you maybe because they're just too polite. They really like you. You've developed a good relationship. So, but maybe it's just a stall. It's almost always just a stall. I want to read you something from one of my favorite books. Has anybody here read How I Raised Myself from Failure to Success in Selling? It's an old book. He was a contemporary of Dale Carnegie. I heard somebody talk about, no longer are you reading How to Win Friends. If you're not reading How to Win Friends at least every 2 years, you're not in sales. Anyway, if I can read this without my glasses. So Frank Betcher was an insurance salesman. He'd been a pro ball player who had not done very well. And but he was starting to figure things out. And he said, over a period of years, I cut down my average of closing, only 1 out of 29, to 1 out of 25, then 1 out of 20, then 1 out of 10, and finally 1 out of 3. Let me give you an example of how. The record showed that 70% of my sales were made on the first interview, 23% on the second, and 7% on the third and after. But listen to this, 50% of my time was spent going after the 7%. So after doing my records, I thought, why bother with the 7%? Why not put all my time into the first and second interviews? That decision alone increased the value of each phone call he made from $2.80 to $4.27. Without records, I have no way of knowing what I was doing wrong. His point was he found out how he closed, first or second sale. Now, yours might be the 6th or the 7th. Yours might be different. But if you're not keeping records and you're not thinking about it, you're going to take a no, you're going to throw that into your pipeline, and you're going to keep calling back and just checking in, just following up, right? And having nothing to give them, nothing of value, and it just continues to be a maybe. So, how do we deal with maybes? Everybody does it a different way. I know Scott's got one, so I'm going to ask his advice. But here's the way that I deal with it. So understand your sales cycle, that's what we talked about, and what the optimum amount of time you should take for each deal. Use this information to know when you should move on and spend valuable time on finding new clients. Right? So that's important. Here's how I finally ended. Scott, it sounds like you want to tell me no.
No, not really.
Okay, so you got two answers, right? No, not really, or yes, I do. I'm okay with either one, because wasting any more time on this person is just, first of all, it's making me think I really have a sale, which I don't. But if he says, well, I really don't want to tell you no, well, Scott, the only other option is yes. So let's figure out how we're going to get this done. All right? So now I've smoked him out. But if he says no, I said, Scott, I appreciate that. I'm probably wasting your time and bothering you, and we're just not going to be able to do business together. But maybe we can in the future, and I leave it very good. Now, this isn't on the second interview. This isn't on the third follow-up for me. My follow-ups can be 4 or 5 months. Right? But once I've decided that I'm just getting smoked, I just finally say, Scott, it sounds like you want to tell me no. And then I just take the, it's a fish or cut bait question. I've got to get, but I really have to get it out of my mind.
Yep.
Have to get that sale out of my mind because it's not real anymore.
Right.
And it's got to get out of my pipeline, and it's got to get off. And I know I've been lying to my sales manager for 2 years about this guy, but really he's not going to. He's just kind of, the evidence is there. Go ahead,
We had people come in and say, the sale isn't made until after like 8 to 10, 12 times.
Well, that's what Eric said last time, and that could be for his business. That could be the rhythm. But he's done enough work to know what that rhythm is. What Frank Betcher's saying, for him it was 2. Now he was a hard closer. Okay, he was selling insurance, and basically what he found out was by the time he went to number 3, they were just dawdling. It wasn't going to go anywhere, and then he was just, as you said, chasing. So you got to know it for your own business.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times I'll, like, if someone hasn't gotten back to me,
Yeah.
I will just leave them a message. Say, hey, left a couple messages, haven't heard back from you, so if I don't hear back from you, I assume you're not interested anymore.
Yeah.
And then leave it at that. And then
Yeah.
if they get back to me, that means that they are still interested. There's still some hope. But
Right. So you found your own question for kind of fish or cut bait.
Yeah.
Let's wrap this up. Gail?
Yeah, I think the hardest part is that sometimes we gotta track our numbers, and that's the part we don't wanna do, is do that. We gotta know the whole process of how many meetings it takes to make a sale. And then you gotta look at it and decide, do I cut that off? Because there's my new business I'm in now, I have 2-year sales cycles sometimes. So I have to have a lot more meetings or a lot more contacts than I did previously when I sold something in 3 months.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key. And the market changes. Right now, things aren't the same. I'm kind of figuring it out again because of what's going on.
Well, we also have marketing, which can do drip emails to people that we're not spending time with.
Exactly.
And kind of keeping in touch with people, and then maybe once every couple of months we give them a call. So it's not like, in his day when his only way was to call somebody
right
on the phone, and he had to take that time himself. So we have some electronic means that can keep us in touch with them, and then also find out if they go to our website after one of our emails and they're kind of showing this interest again. So there's some things that can go on. Dorothy?
Yeah, I think, with this, very interesting in my line, we always talk about with my leadership, a no is a no right now. So maybe that means follow up and we say, hey, sounds like right now is not a good time. Maybe we'll reach out, we'll reach out in 8 months or so, right? Because our sales cycle is 6 to 9 months. So, a no right now, we go back to our closed loss list. And we say, which of these, should we reapproach, which of these is
Yeah, now you have a very limited marketplace.
Yeah.
Right? So that changes the field as well. So she's working with nursing
Insurance
homes
adjacent, yeah.
and things like that, but only a select limited number of, because many of them are already assigned to another vendor, and so she doesn't even have a chance because they're owned by that other vendor, right? So she's got a list of how many, what's your market?
Probably 50 to 70 total.
So she can't say goodbye forever,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
She can say goodbye for now, I'll come back to you,
Yeah.
we'll keep dripping information to you, and if something catches. But I've only got 50 to 100, so I'm limited. Kevin?
I also think we get a lot of maybes because we're in the Midwest.
Yep.
And everyone's so nice, so,
Yeah.
they're afraid to tell you no.
Well, I've told you, an outgoing Minnesotan looks at your shoes while he's talking, so. Yeah, I think we do get that. I think we do get that a lot more in the Midwest because people just don't want to say no, which is kind of where I came up with this. Because then we play with them and then we get them locked into our mind and we go, yeah, I got $1 million worth of business sitting out there. $500,000 of it, which should have said no to you, but they were too polite and you let them go. All right, let's get these last two wrapped up. Spending productive time on unproductive clients. So if you are also a farmer and you are required to continue contact with a client after you've sold them, clients have different values and not all of them are the same. And almost everybody I talk to about this will say the most worthless clients take the most time. The lowest value clients want the most service, right? So I was consulting with a company and I can't remember exactly what they sold. It was some kind of a carrier to move chips from one machine to be installed in another machine. And they sold a lot over in Southeast Asia. And they had a new salesman there, and there was a customer there that was just beating up this poor guy. And your product is garbage, your prices are too high, your service is lousy. And the CEO said to me, what do we do about this customer? I said, what's your profitability on this? We don't make any money on this guy at all. I said, fire him. Fire the customer. And he said, what? I said, we can do that? I said, absolutely. I said, next time you go there, he said he was planning a trip. I said, when you go there, take his files, sit down, meet with him, and say, you're not worth it. You're too mean, you're beaten up by a salesperson, we're giving you this at too low a price, I'm going to let you go to one of our competitors, here's all your information. So he did that, and the guy said, you can't do that to me. I said, why can't I do that to you? But you got the best product, you got the best, I can only use your product. He found out what was really going on. He was just beating him up to beat him up on price. So the guy said, here's the rules. If you want us to work with you, here's the price, and you're not going to beat up my salesman anymore, and here's what you're going to do. And the guy agreed to everything. Okay? So you had two choices. Get rid of them. Don't waste time on unproductive clients, or make them toe the line. But if you're losing money on a client because they've been your client forever, get rid of them. That's not a value statement. They've probably been your client forever because you've given them such a low price and so much more service than anybody would. They'd be crazy to leave you. And the only thing you're getting out of it is to be able to say, we've had this client for 20 years. He's been screwing us for 19, but we've had him for 20. So, rank your clients by their value or potential value. How much business could they be doing with us? Are they increasing their business over time, or is their business staying flat? Are we making money off of them, or are we not making money off them? Would the salesman be happier than can be if we fired him, or would the salesman be sad that we fired him? Are they nice people? Sometimes if they're just nice people, we'll keep them on and continue to do business with them. But why are we kowtowing, giving the best price to creeps? Get rid of them. They're wasting your time and your value. And then the CFO will say, oh, we lost the customer. We made $10,000 just by getting rid of them. Look at your bottom line numbers and quit looking at revenue. What did you tell me yesterday, Scott?
You can't raise revenue by cutting expenses.
And that's what CFOs all want to do. Let's cut all the expenses and then you guys go out and sell more. It's like, well, you just took every ability to sell out of our pocketbook. But you want us to raise revenue. So rank your clients, the D clients, see if you can get rid of them, because they're just wasting your time and they're wasting your value. All right, last one, selling to a customer with opposing values. This is one I've come across in the last 5 years I've decided on. If they don't value what you value, run away. They aren't going to change because you show them how great your value is. If all they value is low cost, and you're not the lowest cost provider, go away. Say, thank you very much, it's been really nice chatting with you. It seems to me that the most important thing to you is price, and we're not going to lower our price for you. Because our value is too good, and our customers appreciate it, so thank you for talking. Now, there's nothing more interesting than walking out of a sales meeting telling the customer no. And turning the shoe on the other foot with them and having them go, well, wait a minute. Wait a minute, maybe we can do business here. And then you can do the same thing the guy did to the Southeast Asian client. Say, here's how we do business. I'd love to do business with you if you can follow our rules. Right? This is how we do things. This is why our customers stick with us for a long time, because we provide this value. If that value is not important to them, you're not going anywhere with them. Scott and I just had a client last winter, and their value was, you need to know everything about our company. In order to sell our product, you need to have been with our company for 6 months, learn all about it, view everything we do, get totally emotionally involved in our company. And Scott and I were like, well, we'll get them on the phone on the second day, and they'll start making calls. Oh, you can't do that. Well, we've only done it like 1,000 times. You don't need to know everything about the company to make a phone call, and then if they get an appointment, we'll send somebody experienced with them. Oh, no. They don't know enough about our company. And so finally we fired each other and we walked away because we were not going to get anywhere with that company. And Scott took half the ideas we would, have used them with another company, so that was great. Because they just weren't going to value what we value. And it was wasting our time. What's the saying? Don't try to teach a pig to sing. It wastes your time and annoys the pig. And that's what we were facing, wasn't it, Scott? Yeah. We were going to try and teach that pig to sing, and they wanted to spend all kinds of time. All right, so solution. You don't have to have perfect ideological match with every customer. It's best to find customers that value what you value. The sale will be easier and the relationship will be smoother. So that's also what you're trying to find. What do you value in a relationship? Can we give that to you? Is that an ideological match with us? And if it is, then you're going to get along with that customer. You're going to get along with them for a long period of time. All right. So I think we had almost all the things that we talked about in this list somewhere, and a lot of great ideas that we didn't talk about. But that doesn't make them any less valuable than the 7 things that we did talk about. So here's what I want you to think about the last month. How can you grow from this time we spent together? What can you do differently? What's 1 or 2 ideas? Just jot those down at the bottom of the section there. Out of all the things we talked about, what are 1 or 2 things that you want to do differently as a result of this? All right, who wants to volunteer just an idea that they got? Let's just get 5 or 6 of them real quick. Scott.
Bill, you reminded me of something out of the Challenger sale that I think is really important and kind of forgot, and that is to lead to the solution, not lead with the solution.
Excellent. All right, what's another one? Jeff.
Making assumptions about like a situation with someone.
Okay.
Because you've had the experience, okay, I did this that time.
Yeah.
But
it sounded like the same problem I had dealt with before, so
Yeah,
now I'll make all these
exactly.
assumptions about it. Excellent. All right, another one. Yeah, no.
Not asking questions. I love what you said about making a pre-list of questions and breaking them. Definitely want to do that.
Super. Excellent. Another idea. One more. Yeah.
Going to the solution too quickly.
Okay.
And with little information.
Yeah. Give it time. Let it come to you. All right. Good. All right. So let me close with a story, because that's how I always close. So there was a German Coast Guard. He was a Coast Guard radioman and kind of monitored the airwaves, and he was pretty new. His English was okay, and that was kind of that's the language of the sea. And so his boss kind of had he wasn't supposed to leave him by himself, but he had something he wanted to do, so he put him in charge of the Coast Guard station that night. And well, wouldn't you know it, the storm hit, and you got a call, Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. help us. And he goes, yeah, this is a German Coast Guard. What is your problem? He goes, yeah, we are, you know, at this latitude in the Bering Sea, and we're sinking. Ah, yes, what are you thinking about? Well, the one thing we didn't talk about is communication, but all these things we did talk about are about communication. How you relate, how you communicate with your customer, making sure that you find out what their needs are and find a way to fill them. It's been great being here with you today. Really enjoyed it, and thank you very much.
Thank you.